welcome along. There is life in the Champions Cup pool stages yet, but Munster and Leinster feeling very good about themselves on this Monday morning. Thomond Park, Saturday evening, sort of a throwback to proceedings. Steam rising off bodies, big time atmosphere, 22,000 people there. And in the end, it was a kind of raucous Munster win against Saracens, 17-12. Meanwhile, we had the game of the season so far yesterday, Sunday. It finished La Rochelle 14, Leinster 16. Elsewhere, Ulster unravelled a touch in the second half at Welford Road. They were beaten 38 points to 10. To discuss all, happy to say in studio, Cian Tracey of the Irish Independent. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
And former Irish international Ian Madigan is with us as well. Ian, hi.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Cian. Yeah, delighted to be on.
Just to mention a reminder of our live show on January 29th. We are happily bowled over by the uptake for tickets. Martin Johnson, Keith Wood on stage together. A few days out from Ireland, England. Should be a great evening. We are at the Ambassador Theatre, very historical venue. Sit back and enjoy the two lads on stage. The place to go for the final tickets, ticketmaster.ie. Search Indosport on the website. Go to ticketmaster.ie and then search Indosport within. It's a bit easier. Doors 6:30. We will start on time 7:30, I assure you. And it's all, of course, with thanks to Energia, who are very much on board as our rugby sponsors for the year here on Indosport. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels, grassroots with the Energia AIL. They are the official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht, the Irish men's and women's teams, and they have the Energia for All initiative as well, supporting inclusion and welcoming everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. And energia.ie/rugby is where you can learn about their rugby partnerships and find out about their exclusive home energy offers as well for rugby fans. So that is the place to go. We'll touch on Champions Cup, obviously, in the main. Just a brief word, Cian, news on Connacht as well. They beat Leon 52-24, but announced this morning that the test in the West, not bad.
You got to like it.
Not bad. McHale Park versus Munster, end of March, is a 25,000 sellout. They set a new record of tickets sold in a single day. They went on general sale this morning after priority lists and members lists over the previous couple of days, largely gone at that stage. So Mayo wants rugby.
Yeah, and look, obviously the Dexicom Stadium, as we're supposed to call it now, the old sports ground, is being done up. So the timing was perfect in terms of, you know, spreading the love around the province. Ulster played in, where did Ulster play a couple of seasons ago? They played in the GA pitch, Breffni Park, that was it. You know, Munster have played down in Cork. It's obviously Musgrave Park and Porky Queeve as well. So I'm a big fan of the idea of moving games around the province, if nothing else, then to actually try and tap into maybe a supporter base that doesn't always get to go to the game. So remarkable to have sold it out so quickly and already looking forward to it.
Yeah. Why did Leinster never play a game outside of Dublin, Ian? They talk about how they value the 12 counties a lot, but they never seem to go there.
Good question. I'm not too sure, to be honest. Obviously, they're happy moving to Croke Park if they can sell it out for Munster and have 80,000 there. And, you know, having some games out in Tala for pre-season and just trying to grow the game that way. But I can't see a reason why they wouldn't do it in one of the other counties.
Sorry, I'm only messing with you. I'm just putting
You've got me there.
I'm just putting you on the spot.
I once in Paul for a few words.
Spokesperson for Leinster.
I think Leo Cullen was actually asked about this a couple of months ago. It was kind of around when Munster were playing the All Blacks 15 in Thomond Park, that, you know, why don't Leinster play more touring sides and maybe move the games around? And his argument was that facilities, in terms of floodlights, having, you know, proper dressing rooms and things like that, would be one of the sticking points. To be fair to them, in pre-season they do make a big effort in terms of trying to move around the province. Like I was down in Wexford, in Gorey last summer, so I know it's not quite the same as playing a game, but that was what Leo Cullen said in terms of having the right facilities.
Okay, well, Connacht are going to McHale Park, 25,000 sellout. That's at the end of March. Let's work our way through the weekend chronologically then. Munster and Leinster, I guess, to the fore here. A 17-12 win for Munster against Saracens. It was 6-3 at half-time, which was, I think, worrying. You were there for the paper, Cian. Mm-hmm. I get, you know, there's a certain point here with Munster where making the knockout stages and doing so without numbers of personnel, but also the quality of people they're missing in Peter O'Mahony and Klein, Nankivell, their pace in Tacker Abrams, Craig Casey. This wasn't pretty for a large swathe of the game. It was, errors strewn. Almost none of that matters. My kind of lingering memory from the game now is second half when their tails were up and the crowd were in it and there was a bit of tempo to things, and that kind of is the taste which lingers. So it's kind of washed away a lot of the mistakes. But I tell you what, half time I was thinking we're in big trouble here.
The less said about the first half, the better, Joe, for sure. Like, another thing you didn't mention is that they've no permanent head coach in place as well. So all of this is going on in the background. And look, there's only so many times where, you can feel like you can go back to the well in terms of cliches around Munster. It was a big English team coming to Thomond Park. It was a Saturday night, 22,000 people, like you mentioned, Joe. But it had, apart from that, being at the game, it had all the hallmarks of one of those classic European days. It didn't quite have the first half performance, but to be fair to the crowd, they constantly stuck with the team. And I was writing about this today. Sometimes you can kind of pay too much credence to that, but genuinely the atmosphere was amazing. And I think, Ian Costello touched on this afterwards, Tig Byrne did, Jack Crowley, about the role that the crowd played in terms of helping them turn the tide, and I do genuinely think that they did, and it was just great to feel that buzz in Thomond Park again. I think the interim head coach Ian Costello and assistants deserve a lot of credit for looking to the bench as early as they did, because as we've mentioned, the first half was a real turgid affair. Munster loaded their bench, and this was something I think that a few eyebrows were raised by supporters, that why was the likes of Tom Ahern and John Hodnett, probably two of their in-form performers, named on the bench. But if you think back to when Munster won the URC, this was a tactic that they used, whether it was putting Gavin Coombs on the bench, and you even see Leinster doing it now in a more extreme way with having Andrew Porter on the bench. So I would imagine that those conversations with the likes of Tom Ahern and John Hodnett were pretty tough last week, because they more than merited, I think, a starting place. There's an Ireland squad being named on Wednesday. On paper, it didn't look great that they didn't get their chance in the start, but what an impact that they made. So Ian Costello made 4 changes, Joe. I think it was at 40-something minutes. He brought on 2 of his 3 front rows. John Ryan and Diarmuid Barrett came on, along with Tom Ahern and John Hodnett. And that was the turning of the game, really, for me. Dion Bluler scored the first try. They didn't take him off, I think, which was a really important decision. Unfortunately, his short-term contract is coming to an end with Munster. I think a lot of supporters will be disappointed to hear that there was no scope to extend his stay beyond the end of the month, purely because the Sharks want him back. I think they're going to play a couple of games during the Six Nations window to play catch up. So he's made a massive, massive impact. And just like a side note to that, I know David Humphreys has brought in the rule about, banning signing overseas props. And there was an exception made to the rule because of Munster's injury list. But it just showed the merit in having a top quality overseas player like that to deliver, because I don't think it's an exaggeration to say Munster would not have won that game without Bluler, not only his try, but in terms of what he brings at the scrum as well. So that was really, really pleasing. I thought the quality of their 2 tries was excellent. Gavin Coombs had quite enough evening, but burst into life for the first try. Jack Crowley, I think, had a little bit of a mixed bag, but it was his crossfield kick that created the try for John Hodnett, and it puts them right back, I suppose, with their destiny in their own hands, which at half time you were kind of worried, even coming up to the hour mark. So all in all, a very good night at the office.
Because pre-gaming, Ian Costello was talking to the TV coverage, and he was saying it's been a perfect build-up. We had 5 days off to rest and recharge, and then we had 10 days to prep for this game. So we really put some good stuff together. And you thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. And then, vroom, like Tig Byrne not catching a ball, Shane Daly under a high ball, Jack Crowley almost scoring like what could be a try of the season, and then just ball got away from. It was just a litany of self-inflicted pain, and then they got it together. Any particular reason it flicked, or what did you make of the performance?
I think they hung in there well. Like, there was a period in the second half where you're thinking, geez, our Sarries going to get momentum here, but it was Munster that won the momentum back, and it was similar to how La Rochelle did in the Leinster game. Similar, I had a feeling, in commentary, that Leinster were going to pull away in the second half, and you certainly had that feeling that, look, Saracens are going to have their purple patch at some stage, but they didn't. They stuck. Saracens were very diligent in sticking to their game plan. They kicked the ball a huge amount, as we're seeing a lot of teams doing now. But Munster were able to dig deep, and it was crucial that they got that try when they did, and that kick that Crowley got to get it out to 10 points made a huge difference as well. And that's what you got to do in European rugby. It doesn't matter if you win a bit ugly at times. You just got to hang in there when the opposition get their moment of dominance, like, for example, La Rochelle had in the first half an hour. Leinster made it really difficult for them to score. And ultimately, that's what Munster did really well. They made it very difficult for the Sarries to get any sort of continuity with their attack. They were so physical in the tackle. They contested at the breakdown really well. Generally, I thought they covered the backfield well and actually kicked out of hand as well as I've seen them do. Something that would have been, definitely critical of earlier on in the season, that they've kicked poorly out of hand. They kicked well, they kicked long, and they got connected in their kick chase. And ultimately, they gave the Saracens attack very few options.
Because it's interesting, it's worth making the point that Saracens have been free scoring this year. So, I've seen their attack on Saturday criticised. But given how they've attacked for much of the season, you have to give Munster their fair share of credit for shutting them down a touch.
Yeah, and for Sarries, for them, they'll look at it and go, well, ultimately we've given ourselves a gilt-edged opportunity to score a try to win the match at the end. Ultimately, they weren't able to execute. You're saying, Cian, that Crowley had, a mixed game at times, but he comes up with a big play at the end, being able to strip the ball out of Liam Williams' hand. Had he not done that, they probably score. Like, that was a massive defensive play, and he's gone a seriously long distance to get himself into that position on multi-phase. Shows he's a really fit guy, and that is the Munster way. You just hang in there, until the ball is dotted down for a try. There's still going to be a chance of turning them over. And
one other quick point, Ian Keane mentioned Ahern and Hodnett held in reserve. It was interesting, even the likes of Jamie Heaslip on the TV coverage pre-game. I don't like it. Just play your best team, start with your best team. That's what I want as a player. That's what I think they should do. Where are you on that front?
I think it worked for Munster. Hodnett came on, and he's a real pinball of a player. He's in nice shape. He's very physical. Gets over the ball well. And Ahern had a very good impact. You look at Leinster going with that strategy with, for example, Conan and Snyman, and they actually didn't have much of an impact when they came on. So it can work for you sometimes, and in the instance for Munster, when it did, you look great. But for me, I would have preference of just getting your best players out on the pitch, starting off the game, because you don't want the game to get away from you and be trying to bring these guys off the bench. But for me, that game was always going to be an arm wrestle, and it was a stroke of genius from the Munster coaching staff to have them in reserve.
I guess the interesting question now, Cian, is what does this do for Munster's season?
You know what, the manner in which, like Ian has outlined there, that they dug it out, I think it has the potential to really stand to them. Look, I think even the staunchest Munster supporter would admit that they are a bit off going all the way in this competition. But all they can do is give themselves the best chance, and that means getting home advantage for as long as possible. I've already outlined the Thomond Park factor, which, to be fair, hasn't always been there in the last couple of years. It's definitely not the fortress that it was, but Munster are going to go to Northampton this weekend. There's a bit of symmetry there because that's where their Champions Cup ended last season. Northampton beat them twice in the pool stages and at the round of 16. Previous year, Munster lost in Durban in the round of 16 against the Sharks. So if Munster were to get home advantage after this weekend's results for the round of 16, potentially depending on their own result and results elsewhere, they could have a home quarter final as well. So that's absolutely massive. Not to mention the money that they'll make from it. But they haven't played a knockout game apart from the URC over the last couple of years. So they've put their destiny firmly back in their own hands. They're facing a Northampton team which I think is going to be much changed this weekend. They were missing a lot of guys. Finn Smith pulled out last minute, I think, due to illness. They've got a couple of injuries that are due back. I think they had a prop starting in the second row. They went 21-0 up in Stade Francais and ended up losing that game. So I wouldn't read too much into that. I think this Northampton team, even though they haven't been firing on all cylinders this season, still pose a major threat at Franklin's Gardens. They don't lose too often there. But Munster, by beating this Sarries team, by keeping them trialists, because I don't think we're going to see the same type of game this weekend in terms of that kind of slugfest, because Northampton will score tries, and I think it's going to be down to Munster's ability, obviously, to shut them out, but their ability to score tries as well. It could be quite a high scoring game, but I think Dennis Leamy and his defence will take an enormous amount of credit from keeping that Sarries attack quiet, because as you mentioned, Joe, even the previous week against Bristol, wasn't it, they were scintillating at times. So I think Munster deserve a lot of credit for their role in shutting down that game plan.
And I noted the likes of O'Mahony, Sean Klein, Nankiville, Tacker Abrams, Craig Casey, all starters and important starters. Any of them back soon?
O'Mahony is due back. Yeah, he was touch and go for last weekend, and you could imagine that was the exact type of game that he would have relished. I mean, the likes of Itoje was bringing serious niggle to it all day. I thought he was excellent, by the way. I know he plays the game on the edge. I think we saw a bit of that from Caelan Doris yesterday as well for Leinster, but it is so effective at what he does. I think he's pretty much a nail-on line starter, just as a slight aside. So O'Mahony will make a massive difference coming back. Like, that goes without say. Munster's line, it was actually largely assured. That was definitely an area of concern, particularly with the likes of Itoje, but I think Niall Scannell and the pack did a really good job there. So O'Mahony probably the one that they're looking to get back, and I wouldn't imagine there'd probably be too many other changes, but they're definitely in good stead, like I said, Joe. I mean, coming up to that hour mark, they're potentially not necessarily heading out of the tournament, but if they were going to be going on the road again in the last 16, and they flipped that on their head now thanks to the bench press and a brilliant last 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like quite often your season can hinge on one game, and that is this week for Munster. Like, Sarries are playing Cast. They'll beat Cast at home. I'd have total confidence in that. So if Munster were to lose, they would most likely then drop to third position, because Saints would pass them or would maintain first place. Sarries would go past them into second place. And the knock-on impact of that is just absolutely huge, because if Munster can go to Saints and win and get first place, they'll have a home last 16, which, look, we'd all back Munster to win that game in Thomond. I mean, they'd have a home quarter-final. The knock-on impact that has on this season and filling them up for confidence going back into the URC, but also from a financial side, like each of those home last 16 and quarter-final, you're probably looking at north of 300,000 per game. You throw in on top of that, getting the fans back, more season tickets for next year, jersey sales. That is the difference between signing no additional marquee players or one additional marquee player, or if you win both of those games, two additional marquee players. And that's where Leinster have consistently had those home games and had the luxury of signing the likes of Barrett and Snyman. It is so important that Munster perform next week and beat Saints and get that home game.
Yeah, and to round off where they are, if I'm interpreting you correctly, and we're going to come on to Leinster La Rochelle, which may be encapsulated the standard of the elite bracket of this tournament. Ian, you're seeing this season for Munster in Europe as, look, sure, have a crack at whoever comes before you and see what happens, but realistically eke out a home game, revenue, just respectability, as opposed to a real chance of winning this tournament.
Yeah, like do I think Munster have the squad to go on and win the tournament? No, but if they can get a home run and make the semi-final, anything can happen. But it comes back to this weekend against Saints. Can they beat top English opposition away from home? They weren't able to do it last year. They have to do it this year for this season and next season.
Very good. Before we leave off Munster, no word on a head coach. No great urgency around it seems.
No, and look, I know some supporters might be frustrated with that, but just as the way it's kind of fallen since November, I've covered I think every single Munster game, so I've been down there a lot. I have a decent sense of what's going on, but there's no sense of urgency, but there's also no sense of panic, because they have Chris Boyd, who it's worth mentioning as well, is going to be a key kind of, sleeper in the Munster camp this week. He was the guy who basically built into Northampton to what they are. He was back in New Zealand for Christmas. He's back now at Munster for the next few weeks. He was at Thomond Park on Saturday. So his influence will be absolutely crucial. So I think having a guy like that in there, having Ian Costello, who, I mentioned him earlier, I think he's been a brilliant sort of figurehead for this period for Munster, just the way he kind of conducts himself. There's no sense of panic. He's got a very important job that he has to go back to as Munster's head of rugby operations. Look, the signs would still point to Mike Prendergast, and obviously he's come out and he said that he does want the job. But I suppose the fear, if you were in his shoes, is the longer that they wait, the longer that or more likely I think there's a chance that they might look for someone more experienced. But certainly inside the camp, having talked to a lot of players over the last few weeks, the coaches as well, is that it's business as usual. And when they're producing results, Joe, like they did last weekend, it's hard to argue with it. You don't want to rush and just get a coach for the sake of it. You know, come the end of the season, there could be more coaches available. I think they're right to take their time to get the right appointment. If that's Mike Prendergast, all well and good, but who knows what's going on behind the scenes in terms of potentially looking in the Southern Hemisphere. But I think it's worth waiting to get the right appointment rather than rushing it.
Okay, we'll push on. So events yesterday in La Rochelle, Leinster win the game 16 points to 14. It kind of rubber stamped the feeling of, well, that was a bloody good weekend of rugby. This was an amazing game, amazing finish, drama to the end. If people missed how the end finished, Hastoy had a penalty from halfway, which came up just short. But then Leinster were chased down and La Rochelle won a scrum. And then there was a drop goal attempt, blocked down by Josh van der Fleer. But La Rochelle get the ball again. They don't have a second drop goal attempt. They're going here, there and everywhere for many, many phases, it feels like, out wide. Hastoy's playing like running rugby. And eventually a forward pass brings the game to its conclusion. Unbelievable drama. This was just an incredible game. You were on commentary for it.
Yeah, it was. It was a brilliant game, brilliant contest. Two different styles going at it. I think it was a really important game for La Rochelle to prove that they are still at the very top table of European rugby. And while they didn't come out on top of that match, they showed that, look, they definitely have a team that can go on and win this. And Rowan O'Gara certainly backed that up when he was interviewed afterwards. You know, he's come away from that game with the belief that he has the nous and the squad to be able to beat the likes of Leinster if they do meet them again later in the competition. Leinster's defence, again, was excellent. And they're leaning on it heavily. You know, the first 30 minutes when they're under siege in their own 22, their ability to hold the opposition up in the tackle, counter ruck, create slow ball for them, giving their teammates more time to get set and then get off the line. It made the La Rochelle attack look basic. The concerns for Leinster were they did get broken, and you know, I thought going into the game it's going to be what strategy is Rog going to do to counteract Leinster's high line speed, and I thought it was going to be a strategic kicking game and using the short side to get back and to be attacking against the same Leinster defenders over and over again. He did that at times, and their short kicking game was very effective, but they were brave enough to go around the Leinster high press or rush defence, and they got great change from it. You know, they held their depth, their pass quality was excellent, and they really put Leinster under pressure. And had it not been for some miraculous scramble defence, which I wouldn't be looking to rely on, like there is an element of luck with that, and if you can do that consistently, you will score tries. But that wasn't the case, and that's how the game went. I think Leinster were affected by some of the late changes. You know, you don't want to underestimate the reps that you get in training on a Tuesday and a Thursday, you know, especially in the outside backs, timing, communication. And you could see that a couple of times with, you know, Henshaw and Barrett and Osborne, that their timing was just slightly off. And I thought the Leinster attack wasn't as patient as we've seen. And part of that is the pressure that they were under. La Rochelle were taking their time away. You know, a split second makes a big difference at the top level. And they certainly pulled the trigger on going wide too early for me. They weren't patient enough. They needed to go an extra phase, win the physical battle, create quick ball, tie in some more defenders, and then go wide. And that's why the Leinster attack didn't look particularly fluid at times.
Yeah. The competition at Breakdown, Cian, it was kind of test level. You know it's a good game when watching a defence and watching the contest at the Breakdown is genuinely compelling. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you say it with respect to Munster and Saracens and every other game that we all watched over the weekend. This was, this is actually the level. Like, I think, you know, we mentioned the error-strewn nature of the Munster performance. I think the first handling error in this game was Porter on the half-hour mark. You know, it was all just crisp in so many ways.
Compared to the opening kickoff in Thomond Park that Mike Haley dropped.
Yeah, line out, a notable exception we'll come to. But what a game of rugby.
Yeah, it was amazing. I think this weekend, or last weekend, felt like the weekend where the season really picked up. The first half of the season, bit of a drag, not going to lie. November didn't live up to the hype. I think when the All Blacks game didn't go according to plan, we didn't get the game we deserved. Or we all thought we would get, I should say. It just kind of fed into the month. The early rounds of the Champions Cup were a bit slow to get going. So between the Munster game at the weekend and this game as well, it felt like the season is now properly up and running. Yeah, the breakdown battle was amazing. It's not something that you would always say about watching rugby, possibly one for the purists, but I mentioned him earlier. I thought Caelan Doris was exceptional, like genuinely one of the great European performances, if that's not overstating it. Individual performances from Caelan Doris, just like a pain in the arse for La Rochelle. Now, like I told you, he plays the game on the edge, and I think another referee at different times might ping him, but he did a really good job of playing to the Georgian ref Nika Amikashvili, who I thought had a really good game. By the way, I thought he contributed to a really good contest. So look, Leinster will be massively pleased. Like Ian touched on the La Rochelle attack there, looking the Leinster defence making it look a bit ordinary. The times that I've seen La Rochelle this season, I think their attack is a bit ordinary. I know they're missing a couple of key guys. Teddy Thomas is suspended. Jonathan Daunty is a big guy in more ways than one at 12 for them. But their attack has regressed, I think. And I think that's a big thing that Ronan O'Gara is obviously going to be looking at. So I would still have concerns about Leinster as well as they look. I think they toe such a fine line between wanting to defend and ask, almost like, telling teams, come on, try and break us open. And I'm probably only talking about Toulouse here. Bordeaux's attack is exceptional, but I'm not sure they have the pack that can live with Leinster. But I think a Toulouse attack will cut Leinster open and will punish them more so than what we've seen. I think that, like I said, didn't think the La Rochelle attack was very good. You look at the number of tackles, Joe, that Leinster had to make. They made 183 tackles compared to La Rochelle's 99, so nearly double. So you think what happens most of the time after a tackle, unless there's an offload, there's going to be a breakdown. You could find an offence at every single breakdown, no matter what team it is. And Leinster are pushing the limit, like massively so. And I would have concerns that come a big knockout game, again, probably against Toulouse, because they're going to have to beat Toulouse if they want to win the Champions Cup. Come that game, if a referee is hot on the breakdown, they could be in trouble, because teams, if it's a Thomas Ramos, will take the penalties. Hastoy left a good few points behind him at the weekend, and I think it's a risky game to play, because Ian has mentioned it there, their attack just isn't firing on all cylinders. The quality of the try that they scored, ironically, was exceptional. Like that try from Joe McCarthy came off a line out which has been struggling. A beautiful set piece move, which I'm sure was came up with by Tyler Blainall. So you can see what they do when the set piece works, but I just think it's such a high wire act to play that when it comes to the knockout stages, I'm not convinced that it's the way to get them over the line, but I could be proven wrong. I would just like to see more from their attack to go with what is an unbelievable defence.
Yeah, I'll bring you in on that, Ian, because I guess it's going to be the debate around Leinster for much of the season. And to be fair to you, last week you said that we were understating just how good the Leinster defence is. I suppose with the view to the knockout stages, one of the aspects Leinster will hope is in their favour is that come knockout stages, when there's tension and nerves, it's harder to play scintillating attacking rugby, and it's easier to go all out in defence, and you've got adrenaline and physicality. And so they might wager that they'll be more effective again come knockout stages by leaning on defence. But I don't discount Keane's points or your points either, that you don't want to be relying on scramble defence as much as maybe they were.
Yeah, look, I think at the midpoint of the season, the culture of your squad, the quality of your defence, that's bedded in. That's going to see them through to the end of the season. Your attack will continue to progress as the season goes on. And how I can see Leinster's attack progressing, finally they've decided who their out half is, which they didn't do last year. They chopped and changed when Ross Byrne got injured. Crowley had to go, Harry Byrne had to go. Prendergast played some games. Ultimately, they went back to Ross Byrne. This year is different. Prendergast is clearly the guy. They're going to stick with them. who's going to go with them in the centre. Personally, I think from the weekend, I'd like to see Barrett playing at 12. I think that's his best position, and that's where he's going to have the most impact in this Leinster team alongside Gary Ringrose. And then in the back three, there's been a lot of chopping and changing. If they can get a run of games with their best back three, whether it's James Lowe, Osborne or Keenan, and I'm not sure who'll play on the other wing. Maybe Jimmy O'Brien or Tommy O'Brien can get back fit. If they can get games under their belt where they can get that cohesion right, I'm confident that Leinster can get their attack firing again. And that's what they're going to have to do if they are going to go on and beat the likes of Toulouse and Bordeaux, because solely relying on their defence against those teams, in my view, isn't going to be enough to go all the way.
Yeah, okay. And it seemed, listening to you on the commentary, for a large quotient of the game, first half hour, it's not overstating it to say Leinster didn't touch the ball, really. There was a Ryan Baird break and Gibson Park overcooked the kick, but that was almost it until they scored that very good try. Around 20 minutes in, there's a huge defensive set on their own 22, and it's tackle after tackle, and tackler is up, and then, back into the ruck. The effort is phenomenal. But you made the point, Ian, that when Leinster did have the ball, La Rochelle pretty comfortable to just fan out, don't commit huge numbers. Something you see teams do to Ireland increasingly, and that kind of left them feeling okay for much of the game.
Yeah, it did. The Leinster attack didn't cause them a whole lot of issues. Prendergast was trying to plot the team around and trying to find or catch La Rochelle out getting short, but Leinster weren't able to get over the gain line. They weren't able to generate that quick ball, and ultimately Prendergast wasn't able to play on the front foot. Rog clearly came in with the game plan of, at every opportunity, take Prendergast's time away, whether it's in possession looking to pass, in possession looking to kick. If you get the opportunity to put high balls up on them, do it. If you get the opportunity to run at them, take it. And that did work out well for La Rochelle. They put him under pressure. I still thought he had a good game. And he was made look better by when he went off. Leinster's attack was even less fluid. So yeah, look, for me, it comes back to the cohesion piece. Can they get that fluidity back? And the only way you can get that is time in the saddle with each other, getting training reps and match reps together.
No, fair point. We'll come back to Prendergast in a second and some of those other topics. So we get to this point where Leinster have their noses in front, and then, in fairness to Leeds, it's an incredible finish on the touchline. La Rochelle come back into the game, underline the point Ian makes that they are now live, real contenders for this tournament in a way that we weren't so sure of even before the weekend. The Leeds finish is just so classy and clever. Jacques Noel on the other wing had a very good game as well, a lot of good performers. Will and I were chatting outside earlier. He was wondering, was Cian Crowley a little too respectful of the rules? I'm not saying once Leeds kicks that ball that you smash him, but can you just step in front or check him a little? Was he a little bit too quick to go, sorry, on you go?
Or did he not think that Leeds would have that skill in him? Because that is an unbelievable skill, to drop the ball onto your foot like that and put it into the grubber. So look, I think you'd have to give the credit to La Rochelle, and that is an obvious way of beating the blitz defence. It was a beautiful crossfield kick from Hastoy, and I think the big moment, Joe, for me in the game was Gary Ringrose's tackle on Hastoy on the hour mark. We saw what
AJ McGinty them.
Yeah, exactly. We saw his tackle taking AJ McGinty out fairly, obviously, in the Bristol game early on. At that stage, an hour had just gone. Hastoy had already missed a pretty handy kick in front of the post. He had this stuffing knocked out of him. I mean, it was a violent collision, again on the legal side, but an unbelievable hit, which Ringrose has been given the freedom in Ian Arbour's system as being this shooter. And at times, you're watching him going into contact and you're wincing for his own safety as well, because he has such little regard for his own body, but wow, is it effective. And that to me was such a big moment in the game, because you look at what happened to Hastoy after that. He ended up missing, albeit a long range kick that came back off the post. He missed the difficult touchline conversion. But as Ian pointed out earlier, Jack Crowley nailed those kicks and they were really important for Munster. Obviously, he had the block-down kick. He kicked the ball out in the full.
Are you attributing this to the tackle?
I wonder how much of an impact it had, because he was down getting treatment for a couple of minutes. It looked potentially like he could go off. The drop goal setup, and it'd be great to get Ian's insight into this because obviously he's in a much better position to judge. But the setup was so poor, and to me that should be on the 10. Aldrich makes an unbelievable break off the back of that scrum and ekes out a good couple of really important meters. But I was watching it back again this morning. Hastoy takes the drop goal from inside the 22, and in my mind that you've got to be a couple more meters back deeper to give yourself a better chance. Look, Josh van der Fleer did unbelievably well, and ironically enough it was him. He caught the ball that came back off the post and got held up in the tackle, which meant that La Rochelle got the scrum, and he did unbelievably well to stay on side and to get the block in. And Leinster then, Joe had to go on, you mentioned earlier, 20 phases they defended in 2.5 minutes, which was, I think, a microcosm of what Leinster are all about now. It was unbelievable to watch. I thought Luke McGrath in that defensive set was outstanding as well. Probably became a little bit of a forgotten man over the last couple of years, but a bit like Conor Murray coming back in the defensive steel that he gave Munster at the weekend. I thought Luke McGrath in that last defensive set was outstanding. So, to go back to your initial point, I wonder, Ringrose knocking the stuffing out of Hastoy, how much of an impact that had him on the end game, because I think you would like to have seen Hastoy go back in the pocket again for a second drop goal.
Well, we'll come to that, yeah, for sure. And I guess 7-1 splitting the bench maybe meant that they didn't feel they could sub him. I'm not sure who
they needed the 7-1 because that's another point, Joe. Like, they had a lot of injuries.
Well, they got lucky with it, but maybe they just
I think that's another reason why Rog will be sort of quietly confident he won't be too downbeat going away from this game, because if they were to meet Leinster again, they would be hopeful to have more of those guys fit.
A couple of things to tease out with you there, Ian. Just as an aside, I mean, Ringrose and plenty of players, to be fair, will leave serious hits on often out halves just after ball is gone. And it's just that interesting, when laws and rules are being designed, soccer, football goes one way, whereby you flick the ball away, you get the ball away and there's contact, not allowed. Whereas obviously in rugby, you would have experienced many, many times delaying the pass, feeling defender, eyeing you up, froth in their mouth and getting the pass away late and then taking that hit. Is it possible to prepare yourself for that hit, or does that one just always hurt?
Oh, it always hurts. And, referring to soccer, as Roy Keane would say, I think the ball was there. Yeah. But like for an attacker, it's treading the fine line of taking it right to the line so you can draw in the defenders, and then you're looking to deliver the pass at the perfect time to release the outside back. Gary's completely in his right there, because if that's a dummy, he still has to obviously tackle him, and that's why the rule is what it is. That, if the ball is just gone, there is certain things you can do to protect yourself, but it's sorry, a bit of background noise.
No, you're
here.
fine.
The security dogs are doing their job. But yeah, look, it's part of the game. I think Courtney Laws was someone who was famous for it, and getting that timing right. What that does to you is the next time that you're attacking is you won't take it as to the line, and that has a big knock-on effect to the defense, because opposed to the defender being stuck on you, they can now swim off you, and then they can hustle the inside of the outside defender, and that makes a big difference. It's no longer a one-on-one outside you, it's actually a 1+1. And that's huge in today's game, because that can result in a tackle and a turnover versus a one-on-one where you can beat the guy and you're not at risk of a turnover. Just to unpack the try as well, like, there's a fair bit in that, because if that just goes 9-10 and Hastoy puts the kick in, it makes a huge difference to Leinster's outside defenders and their back three defence. The ball going from 9 to the forward pod and then out the back to Hastoy, what that does to Leinster's frontline defence is it pulls them all the way up, and that creates a big disconnect between your open winger and your full back, who was Crowley at the time. Hastoy then puts in the kick, which means that Lade is catching it clean. On the point of, look, could Crowley have done more? Like, the best wingers in the world, they've such good spatial awareness that if he felt like Crowley was going to get in and hit him quickly, what he would have done is jumped late. Okay, at that point, Crowley would have been committed to the tackle. Then it's taking someone out in the air, immediate penalty, yellow card. So it is a really, really tricky one. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And ultimately, it was phenomenal skill to pull it off. And I'd agree with Cian on the drop goal. Like, it's what I liked about it from Hastoy is he did it quickly. You're trying to nearly catch the opposition. Is he going to go for it straight away, or is it going to be multiple phases? He went for it straight away, but I think when you're that close to the post, that's all the more reason to go further back. It's different if you're going for a drop goal attempt in around the 10-meter line. The chances of missing are far greater. You want to be as close to the post as possible. But in that instance, buy yourself another couple of yards. And it was definitely a confidence blow. And maybe that's why he didn't step back in and have another go. And he was possibly thinking, look, maybe we can get Leinster to infringe with good attack.
But like, that felt mad. Do you know that they, you know, he's popping up on the wing trying to carry the ball like he's playing for the Babas. Like, get back in the pocket and let's have another drac go. Like he did. Did you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has that in him, if I'm being a bit honest. Like, you look at the points, I know a couple of them were tough, but I think he has an error in him, and I would agree with Ian that his confidence was probably shaken a little bit between that Kerry Ringrose hit, like I mentioned, and missing that drop goal, because Look at his head coach and how many times that he did it over the years. He was a master at it. I'd imagine Rog was pulling his hair out because they got such a good carry off the scrum. I think Rog might even have mentioned it, that they actually got a little bit further than they would have thought. I don't think Leinster will be overly happy with the way Aldridge got those extra couple of metres. So it was prime position, absolutely prime position in front of the post. It just, and I know it's easier said than done in the heat of the battle, last kick of the game and all that, but if he had dropped just a couple of metres back, the difference that would have made, it wouldn't have allowed Josh van der Fleer to get it. And like, that's what all the good tens do, Joe. Even look at Kieran Crowley in South Africa over the summer. They're able to nail those big moments when the pressure is on, and Hastoy wasn't able to do that.
And I think as well, it gives such a clarity of purpose to Leinster in that case, Ian, because they can see he's not in the pocket, no one's in the pocket. All we need to do here is be sensible and don't give away a penalty. Do not give away a penalty. Whereas if you see somebody in the pocket there, and the ball could go to them any moment, there is that degree of, can I disrupt a little bit? Can I go a bit more? Like, he almost handed the kind of psychological initiative to Leinster by having no drop goal threat. It just seemed odd looking in, unless we're missing something here.
No, you're not. And defending on your own 22 is probably the easiest place to defend versus, let's say, defending on the halfway line, where you've got to have 2 or 3 players covering the backfield, an additional player covering the chip line. When you're defending your 22 or inside it, you've got all your bodies in the front line. So no matter where the ruck is, you can create really impressive line speed and you can test the breakdown really hard. And it did look like Leinster were comfortable. If it had gone another 20 phases, I think they were going to be okay. You didn't think that La Rochelle were going to score a try.
Yeah. So to O'Gara post-match, he said, hope we get another crack later in the season because our boys can do better and will do better. There was a general sense, I think, on O'Gara's part of, our season's just kick-started. This was the game we needed. And I was telling Ian even on the match commentary when they went to you on the full-time whistle, by design or otherwise, the first thing you said wasn't great win for Leinster. The first thing you said was La Rochelle are live contenders for this tournament. They're in that top 4. That's what we learned today. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. So O'Gara's asked afterwards if Leinster are a better team playing this way. And I feel like these words are chosen very carefully on his part. I think they're definitely harder to play against. But are they better? We'll see in May. Walk out of the room. Sleep on that for 6 months. So I think he's feeling, no Skelton, no Dante. We've had an iffy season. I suspect O'Gara, Ian, and it was obviously your sense at full time, feels more than okay with how that game went yesterday. And like, La Rochelle could just as easily have won that. And we're sitting here talking about Leinster, no game management, can't come through the sticky games against La Rochelle. All the old failings kind of came to the surface. So, we could be led here by the scoreboard, but actually there's nothing in this at all.
Yeah, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Would you rather be the team that comes away with the win or the loss? You'd rather be the team that comes away with the win. But similar to Argentina and Australia in the autumn, they would have come away from those games along with La Rochelle and gone, you know what, next time we play Ireland, we play Leinster, I think we can beat them if we can do X, Y, and Z slightly better. And I think that's what Ronan is alluding to.
Do you agree with his takeaway in? Neutral venue, these two go at it again. Skelton and Dante fit.
Skelton and Dante fit, getting that bit more go forward, trying to create quicker ruck ball. Can they beat Leinster? They most certainly can. But do I think they will? No.
Okay. Why not?
I still, like, I was disappointed with Leinster's attack at the weekend, but I'm confident that they can get it
better.
right. They have
Okay.
the right personnel there. They have a good coaching staff. They have a deep squad. They'll be able to rotate. When they get to these crucial games, they'll be fresh. And I think it's an easier fix for them.
What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I think it's worth mentioning that it's not just Dante that they're missing. They're missing Bougaree. Talu Latu was suspended last weekend. Obviously, Skelton was out injured. They're missing players from their back three. I know Teddy Thomas' best days are arguably behind him, but they are missing more players. They had a teenager, or at least a 20-year-old prop who came off the bench. Both of their starting props got injured. So Leinster could argue that they were missing James Lowe and Dan Sheehan, who would obviously make a big difference to them, but
Doesn't feel as big a difference.
no, La Rochelle are missing a lot of players there, and I think that's probably where Ronan O'Gara is coming from. But look,
Leinster fans before they shout home advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And like now Leinster have beaten La Rochelle 3 times in a row. I mean, when La Rochelle had won those 2 finals, it became a monkey on their back. They won that slog in the rain last year. They absolutely pumped them at the Aviva, which had the caveat of La Rochelle were playing that game on the fly, having come back from South Africa, and it was a bit of a obviously one-sided game. And now they've come out on top of another arm wrestle as well. So the balance of power is definitely shifted in Leinster. So I think you'd have to say they would be favourites if they made again. But if La Rochelle have more of those guys back, then it could even be closer.
Yeah. You mentioned Prendergast there, Ian. Such an authority, like to start on a positive, such an authority to his kicking off the tee.
Yeah, I really liked in the second half. Well, first off, like the first kick of the game, bang in front of the post on the 10-metre line. That's a tough kick. He just strikes it perfectly well. He looks like a guy who's really in control of the shape that he's hitting off the tee. Hits it remarkably straight. Doesn't look like he's a fader or a drawer of the ball. And then in the second half, when they got that penalty, he was on a slight angle just outside the 10-metre line, and he goes to Doris. Clearly, let's kick a goal here. Really like that from a young out half. You know, the easier thing to do is to say to your captain with conviction, I think we should go for a kick to the corner here and try and get 7. But he stepped up, kicked it well. And yeah, that was a big positive for me.
Yeah. I'm not just saying, I thought you were so brilliant on commentary. I'm watching rugby 25 years, I guess. I'd never had a co-com point out to me, you know, one of the reasons he was potentially blocked down is that he's blocked down twice, kicking spiral. And you obviously made the point, well, you know, the ball is far more in front of you when you're spiraling, and the trajectory it takes longer to get high up in the air. So it's far easier to be blocked down. This was obviously something he learned as well about Champions Cup rugby.
Yeah, look, there's certain kicks in. Well, firstly, thank you for the compliment on the commentary. But yeah, there's certain kicks in rugby that are higher tariff and they're harder to execute. And the spiral kick is the most difficult kick, because typically, first off, you generally need 3 steps to get the kick away. That's just the nature of it. Whereas if you're doing a side punt or a straight on punt, you can get it away in 1 or 2 steps. And that makes a big difference because on a spiral kick, your 3 steps are moving towards the opposition and your workspace is being shut down by the defender and by you moving forward. The other elements of the spiral kick that are particularly difficult, how you place the ball onto your foot. You need the front of the ball to be pointing down. You need it outside your hip. You need the ball, your toe to be pointed down. If you drop it too close to your body, you're not going to get it away. If it's too far away, you'll be reaching. And the trajectory that it comes off your foot, you're typically kicking it from a far lower angle. And that brings, you know, especially when you've got the likes of 6'6" guys running at you, the likelihood of getting blocked down are far higher than going to a side punt where you could be catching the ball 10 metres back from the ruck. You then move 2 steps to your side. You're still kicking it 10 metres away from the gain line. With a spiral, you'd be kicking it maybe 7 or 6 metres away if you've caught it only 10 metres behind. And that's certainly something that Prendergast learned. You don't have the same time on the ball at Champions Cup level, and he will have to be more selective about what kicks he goes to at certain times. On the other side, he went for a banana kick off what was an important touchline penalty. He's 5 meters from the touchline on the right hand side. That's the worst place for a right footer, because typically if you're doing a side punt or a square on punt, you're going to hit with maybe a meter or 2 meters of draw. So if you're kicking from your own 10-meter line, getting it to the opposition 10-meter line or just inside it is a pretty good result. He's gone with a banana kick, so he's tilted the ball up, and he's trying to kick the inside of the ball to get an outswinging shape on it for a right footer, so the ball moving from left to right. If you place the ball slightly wrong, or your foot comes in at the wrong angle, you're just going to kick it dead straight, and it's going to go down the 15-meter line, and you can look very, very silly by only being a few millimeters off. To have the confidence in his own ability to pull off a kick like that was really impressive. And if he can keep challenging himself to hit these spiral kicks, hit these banana kicks to touch, he'll figure it out. And that's why he can go on and be, a top quality out half. Whereas if he just plays the high percentages and is someone who just square punts the ball to touch, or on his exit kicks, he does a side punt, or when he's going for a 50-22, he doesn't spiral the ball, he'll be good, but he won't be great. Yeah. If he can persevere with this, that's where he's going to, separate himself from the competition.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And he does seem like the type of character who will continue to be brave and will absorb mistakes. I mean, it was striking, Cian, after, I think, the second lockdown kick. Bryce Doolan, who again, banana kick of his own, almost 50-22 at one stage, a great game. He takes that block down kick, or it runs through to him, and straight away, I'm putting this in on top of you and I'm chasing after you, and it resulted in a scrum in a very dangerous position for La Rochelle. Prendergast is going to have a season of being tested out like that. This is the kind of year he's going to have. Yeah,
and one of the blockdowns actually led to the penalty that Leinster got for their try, because Robbie Henshaw was tackled high after he claimed the blockdown. So all those little things like Ian's talking about, the banana kick and stuff, you absolutely, in my mind anyway, do not want to coach that out of a guy. This is what makes him different. I thought his stock rose by the fact he got taken off. I think Leinster will regret that. I don't know if it was a predetermined thing. I doubt it was. But if you're bringing Ross Byrne on for the last 20 minutes, the one thing that you want Ross Byrne to do is nail your kicks. And like you've mentioned, Joe, and Ian has outlined, Sam Prendergast was kicking from the tee very well, and Ross Byrne missed a kick. Look, pressure and all that away from home. It's unlike him, but you got to nail those kicks. Geordie Barrett missed one as well, albeit it was much tougher, and Leinster just didn't look as fluid when Sam Prendergast was off the pitch for all the potential issues that he had earlier in the game. I just don't think he should have taken off, and I think Leinster might regret that. I don't know if we'll be seeing it again in a tight game like that.
Yeah, to kind of bluntly sum up Ian's take in the game: defence really, really strong, confident. Leinster attack will get better, and therefore in a very good spot for the year ahead. They will need to sort out their line out. I mean, this is killing them.
Yeah, and it's obviously going to feed into Ireland now in the Six Nations, because it's been an issue for Ireland for a long time. The good news is that Dan Cian is going to be back very soon, but it's unfair to expect or think that all of a sudden the hooker is going to cure everything. Like, Leinster's line-out was excellent down in Limerick on the 27th. Ryan Baird was outstanding, and you were kind of hoping that would have been the one game that they needed to fix it, but I think it was like 88% maybe at the weekend, which isn't obviously too bad, but it's the quality of ball, or the lack of, as the case may be, because I go back to the try that they scored. I mean, it was a ballsy enough call to run that play by throwing the ball, Ronan Keller throwing the ball over the top to Robbie Henshaw. I think La Rochelle will be fuming that they conceded a try off that. But again, like Ireland, it just shows the quality that they have in attack when the line-out functions. And if it doesn't function, they've become more reliant on those kind of set-piece strikes. Ireland are a bit like that as well, but if they don't sort it out, I think they will be in trouble, Joe, because if you're missing 3 or 4 lineouts, again, I'm talking about when it comes to the crunch against a Toulouse, against a Bordeaux, and if your attack hasn't found its straps, which I would agree with Ian. I think the fact that they've now nailed down, you'd have to say, the defensive side of things, I'm optimistic by they have their 10 now, they've players to come back into the back line. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Jordy Barrett. Hugo Keenan was fit at the weekend and he was actually there as a travelling reserve. I mean, there aren't too many times over the last couple of years that Hugo Keenan has been left out of a match day 23, but I just think Jordy Barrett has been, and I thought he was very good again at the weekend at fullback. He just covers the space and reads the game so well. But I would agree with Ian, I think 12 is undoubtedly his best position. And if Leinster want to win the Champions Cup, then I think that's probably something they're going to have to look at. We saw Gary Ringrose, that's where he nailed Hassoy, was out in the right wing again. He was pushed out. So whether that's something they're going to do remains to be seen. It's a Lions year. I don't think Gary Ringrose will be 2 and 2s by the idea of having to play out in the wing. But if Leinster want to win the Champions Cup, having Barrett at 12, Henshaw at 13 and Ringrose at 14 might be the best way to go about it.
Yeah. And it won't come to it that one of Henshaw or Ringrose is on the bench or out of the squad totally, would it, Ian?
It depends who's fit in the back three and personnel there and who they're playing against. Are they going to go with a 6-2 split on a given week? But I think in any of the top sides, no one is safe from being dropped to the bench in that back line.
It feels brutal, doesn't it? To a Ringrose or a Henshaw who immaculate for several seasons over. You just got to make way because this guy's just that bit better.
Yeah, but that's what the best teams have. They've competition across the board, and for me, it was when Barrett came on against Bristol. And just seeing the slickness of his passing, his spatial awareness, his ability when it's not on to carry. He's just such a big physical man.
I know. I swear to God, size is a funny thing on television. And obviously I've never thought about him all that much in my life whilst watching him. I had been sleeping on the fact he's 6'4" for the last decade.
Did you see the picture that Ronan O'Gara tweeted? That
his boots.
Yeah, but you see the size of his boots. I mean, Roger Sunder, as he said himself, there's no chance he's ever going to fit into them. He is an enormous man. But the Barretts are all big. You look at his brother, even Bodie is bigger than you'd probably think as well.
His boots are the size of O'Gara's son's head.
Yeah. Classy touch, though. They obviously would have kind of known each other from the Crusaders.
Yeah, really classy. Yeah, lovely thing to do.
It was even the strategy that Leinster used of look, let's not get into a kick battle over and back. That kind of real kick tennis that we see. If the ball was kicked to Barrett, they were confident that he could just run it back in the middle of the pitch. There's not many fullbacks in the world that can do that because you're running into big, strong guys. And if you don't have the strength to stay up for a period of time and then find the ground at the right period of time, you'll get turned over. And if you don't have the strength to find the ground, you'll be held up and it will be a maul and that will be a turnover.
If you follow that logic through, then Hugo Keenan might be thinking, oh sugar. Because I don't think Hugo has that size to run in like that.
No, that's not Hugo's game. They would never employ tactics like that with Hugo because.
So if they're against a similar sized team again or a brilliant kicking team, they might say, well, do you know what, Jordy, in you go at 15 because you give us that option not to get involved in kick tennis. They have a ton of options. That's the kind of pressure in a good way on the coaching ticket.
Yeah, and that's probably what they're building there. They're building those different options so that they can go multiple different ways depending on the opposition they're playing against. If they think the opposition is particularly good at something, why not take that away?
Yeah. We're pretty much done. So to sum up, that was a really good weekend of pool stage Champions Cup action.
Yeah, Ulster wouldn't agree with you, Joe, but
yes,
the less said about that, maybe the better. That was a real...
Fine until half time.
Yeah.
And then they unravelled. 38-10 final score.
And that's not a vintage Leicester team, albeit they're in a much different position to where Ulster are. Look, Ulster are going to have to go through a bit of pain. Richie Murphy has made this clear. You look at how young the squad is, but it's tough for young guys like that to be taking scorelines like that, and that's been a regular in the Champions Cup so far this season. They're playing Exeter at the weekend, who have similarly are really struggling this season. So at least it gives them a chance to get a win on the board. I think I'm right in saying that even though Exeter and Ulster are on 0 points, they can both of them can still get through, which just shows you how mad and stupid really that the format of the competition is. But if Ulster were to drop into the Challenge Cup, that could be a good place for them. Look at what Connacht are doing. It's brilliant to see them going well. They've top seeds so far. They're already qualified. But I think it was just another, I don't even want to say wake-up call for Ulster, because I think Ulster internally and their supporters externally understand the position that they're in. But if they can keep bringing these guys through, that in the next year, 2 years, you'd be hoping that they're in a much better place. But yeah, that was a tough day at the office at Welford Road at the weekend.
Yeah, because you gave them a sniff in advance from memory.
Yeah, no, look, I did give them a sniff, and I was impressed with how they performed against Connacht. Look, the reality is they are a team that is in transition. It's been widely reported that the budgets have been reduced, but the biggest thing at the moment is you've got Flannery injured at out half, your starting centre partnership of Hume, McCluskey both injured, and then back three, your starting back three of McElroy, Stockdale, Lowry, and then backing him up, Moxham, Balakoon. Like, you're absolutely decimated. I think the average age of the back line was probably in around 21 or 22. You're playing, not only academy guys, they're first year academy, which they don't want to be playing those guys in Champions Cup because it's unfair on them. They're not ready. You want to learn your trade in the URC playing against weaker opposition. But because of the injuries they've been forced into it. And, you touched on it there, Joe. They were in that game at halftime. They some smart play to get 10-0 up. And you could see what they're trying to do, but ultimately they don't have the players to execute the game plan. And the game got away from them so quickly in the second half. Like, Leicester scored a good try, Ulster kick off, give away a penalty at the breakdown immediately. They kick the ball down 60 metres, win the line out. Ulster make a mistake, another try, and then before you know it, you turn a 2-point game into suddenly a 20-point game. Yeah. And they just didn't have the experience to kind of navigate the last part of it. I think with the points difference, whether Exeter or Ulster win, I don't think either of them will make Champions Cup, and that's a blessing in a way for both of those. And obviously we're focusing on Ulster. I'd love to see them obviously beat Exeter and get into the Challenge Cup, get some of those key guys back fit and have a run at that competition, and maybe go on and contest to win it. Because that's the level that they are at the moment, and they'd say that themselves. And I feel for the squad. There's lots of good people up there, and there's quality players, but luck hasn't gone their way thus far.
No. Okay, fellas, that brings us to a close. Rugby Show with thanks to Energy. Ian Madigan, thank you, Ian.
Thanks a million, Joe. Cheers, Cian.
Cian Tracey of the Irish Independent. What game are you at the weekend?
Leinster Bath.
Leinster Bath. Will Bath send over a team?
I think so, yeah. I think Johan van Graham, former Munster coach, would love to get one over on Leinster in Dublin. So I hope so, from my point of view anyway. It's a very good game.
Okay, we will talk soon. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. Ian, thanks a mil, man.
Thanks a million, guys.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers.
Chat to you later.